Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. Pam, who are we waiting on? Still, Roger?
Yep, Roger and Commissioner Womack. Oh, let's see. I don't see either of them on yet.
I just text them as well.
Okay. Ouch.
Commissioner Womack is telling me it won't let him in. Are we at a capacity number or?
No, we shouldn't be.
I did notice that it's a different like passcode this time, or a different room kind of number. So maybe.
Can you
make sure
guys
he's-
send them the number and the passcode?
Yep.
Oh yeah, because the passcode I have on my calendar is different than the passcode we have on this agenda. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, that's possible.
Oh, ouch.
Can you go back up to that passcode again on the agenda?
Yes, I'm in.
Oh, you're in. Okay,
Thank you.
good. Are we waiting on Roger then still?
Well, I don't know how we got two different passcodes. It's pretty confusing.
Is it Roger on?
Don't see Roger yet.
1312. It is different. What the-
Could somebody get a hold of him? I can try.
I'm texting him. I've texted him two different passcodes, so we'll see which one works.
I got it.
I know the passcode on Pam's weekly board agenda for the week. The passcode's correct on that.
Okay. Oops.
Maybe Pam or Mary Beth, you guys can get on the phone with him while we get started. We have a lot to do today, and I don't want to delay it any longer. But
He
I
just got on, it looks like.
Okay.
So one of you hop off. And,
He's on,
He's
he
on.
said.
Got on.
is he on now?
Yes,
Great. Awesome. So we can start?
we can start.
Yes.
Fantastic. Welcome to the, well, I don't know if this is the 8th or 9th COVID Relief Subcommittee for Tuesday, June 2nd. We have a pretty packed agenda. We have a lot of action items to take today. Hopefully we will be taking them. And I'll call on Wayman to read the guidance.
Yes, pursuant to Governor Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-75, the Kent County Board of Commissioners COVID Relief Subcommittee, in order to protect the public health, will conduct this meeting via electronic communications. Any member of the public wishing to listen to the proceedings or provide public comment may do so by using the following internet connection or phone numbers and passcode, which is also listed on the agenda. And any disruptions in the meeting by using offensive language or offensive actions will be muted and you will be removed from the meeting. You can submit public comment at this email address, publiccomment@kentcountymi.gov. Madam Chair.
Sounds like you're muted.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Yeah.
Welcome. We're going to get started. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from May 28th?
Moved by Breve.
Support by Steck.
Moved by
Sure.
Breve, support by Steck. Questions
Sure.
or comments on the minutes from May 28th?
Chair Bolter, this is Talon.
Sure. Commissioner
Uh,
Talon.
In section 4, the minutes about the GR area chamber presentation, there's a sentence there summarizing my words, and I'd like to suggest a change because I didn't think they really reflected what I was trying to say. It says, Mr. Talon emphasized that the additional work performed needs to be compensated too. And my point was that the additional work performed by the businesses that are on the ground doing the work needs to be compensated too. I didn't want to suggest that just the Grand Rapids Chamber should be compensated, but if they are utilizing any businesses in the Latinx community or the African American community, those organizations should be compensated as well. So I'd ask for that friendly amendment to the notes.
Okay, move to amend that. Move to amend the minutes by Commissioner Talon. Support.
Support by Breve.
Support by Breve. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, say aye.
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 This is Steck. Yes, that's an aye, though it really wasn't clear what the actual amendment was, but
Commissioner Talon, would you like to
Sure.
restate the amendment for the minutes?
So it's the addition of the words by businesses that are on the ground doing the work. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Aye.
All right.
thank you, Chair.
Minutes are approved. Moving on to item 3, small business relief support. We had the chamber here last meeting to discuss the possibility of them administering our small business relief program. We had a lot of discussion on criteria and how that would look and the amount of money we would like to devote to that. I think we got a lot of feedback from a lot of individuals. I know I had specifically asked everyone to submit their criteria to staff, which I know they've worked over the weekend with the chamber to incorporate a lot of our concerns and ideas and comments into their presentation today. So with that, I will turn it over to Andy and Dante from the Grand Rapids Chamber.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and appreciate the homework over the weekend because this is so important, and appreciate the focus on this. It's been great working with Wayman and the team, Matt, Linda, and Jeff and Steve on this. So I'm just going to run through this really quick, and then we can talk about the different criteria and the proposal. So again, this fund is focused on using the coronavirus relief funds under the CARES Act to support small business. We're initially proposing that this supports for-profit businesses 0 to 25 full-time equivalent employees located in Kent County. The fund is really, we want those that either have not been able to access dollars or have been declined dollars or need additional support to weather this crisis. So we're not immediately saying you're excluded if you've received dollars already, but it is going to be one of the scoring requirements, which I'll get to in a minute. So bear with me on this. So again, this will all be distributed based upon the CARES Act and working with the county team on that. We're proposing that the short-term economic relief grant, that the ranges go from 5,000, 10,000, 15, and 20,000. A lot of this is going to be, the grant amount is going to be dependent on the unique needs of the business, which, we'll score with the selection committees. But these are the buckets that we're thinking about. And I just want to pause here a little bit on the context of the employee range and these grant sizes. So look at our experience at the Chamber and with the MEDC grant, and then also the experience of other counties. One we just looked at was Oakland County. They put $14 million into their fund. About 90, and they used $5,000 and $10,000 grants. About 93% of those grants went to small businesses under 20 employees. A lot of businesses, 25 and above, are a little bit more sophisticated. They can maybe access other resources or have strong relationships with the bankers. And then the grant can go really far at a small business. Looks like we're getting a little feedback from T. Goris there, so if you can mute yourself, that'd be great. So we really think that range goes far. We pulled the numbers. There's upwards of 25,000 businesses that fall under that 25 employee range. But I know that's going to be a topic of discussion, so I just wanted to give some of the context there, how we landed on that in the proposal. We're also going to, with this proposal, providing technical assistance to grant recipients. And even those that aren't able to access the grant, because the need is so great, we're going to have businesses that apply that don't get them. We want to still be sure that we're connecting with them and providing wraparound services that's going to help their business grow or just survive. So in terms of eligibility, let me scroll down here, make it just a little bit bigger. A little too big. There we go. Eligibility. So you have to answer yes as a business to these three questions in order to go forward. You have to be that private for-profit business in Kent County with 25 full-time equivalents or fewer. Again, maybe a nail salon has 30, 35 employees, but their full-time equivalents bring them under 25. You must have to be directly impacted and experience loss due to COVID, and then must have a business start date prior to February 15th. There's been some discussion on this. We picked that because that was what the PPP program used as a start date. If this committee wants to maybe move that back in time for more established businesses, I think that's open to discussion as well, but that's what we picked right here and part of the discussion we had with staff. So then we get to our scoring metrics. So again, eligibility, you have to answer yes to those. Then we have these scoring metrics that our selection community or committees are going to weight, because again, there's so many different unique businesses, different sectors. We kind of have to be somewhat subjective in how we score it. But the first is, was the business able to operate currently? If you were able to operate remotely the whole time versus a business that just simply can't, we want that to be taken into account. We want to know if the business has already received funding and grant support dollars, whether they're PPP, SBA, or other. And if yes, why do they need more money? How many employees of theirs live in Kent County? Is the owner a resident of Kent County? Where are they at in their business life cycle? We know the start and failure rates of businesses, so we didn't put it as eligibility, but as a metric, as how long has this business been around, as a way to score its survivability. Stability of the business, were they losing money on the upswing or stable prior to the pandemic? And then, do they provide good services that positively contribute to the community's fabric, culture, and unique sense of place? And then, does it appear that the company will be solvent again at the end of the crisis? Working with the lawyers, we put here as what the allowable uses are for the grant. Again, this is COVID-related expenses. I know there's some really, we've been talking about businesses that have been impacted, over the weekend, and this fund though, is for COVID-related expenses that have had interruption due to the public health emergency, and you can see the examples of what they can use it for there. Again, not allowed expenses that are not caused by the public health emergency. I won't go too much into that because I really want to focus on some of the outreach and selection committee here with the time we have. So in order to get the word out and identify the best possible recipients, we need to really have a strong outreach plan. This includes working in collaboration with the local municipal governments and all the ESOs and others, entrepreneurial support organizations that have presented to you and some that haven't. So we went through the agenda and we got all the organizations that have presented to you, and then added some others that haven't, like the Asian Professional Organization, SCORE, Link Up, some others that we think could be really helpful in executing our outreach plan. So in collaboration with the county, we want to create a commitment form, or maybe a memorandum of understanding, or maybe like a services agreement that will articulate the expectations of what it means to be part of this outreach effort. Of course, contact information, logos, promotional information, etc. And then we want to work with the outreach organizations so that before we open it up to applications, they'll all receive embargoed materials to promote this as a resource. We want to do that at least a week prior. We want to host an orientation training for all participating organizations, kind of like the Train the Trainer, to help people understand what this fund is intended for, and to really get the word out to those that may not receive information through the typical county channels or others. We really feel that strong outreach program is going to ensure a diverse applicant pool representing business type, ownership, geography across Kent County, because again, that's the intent, is to get it to the small businesses that need it across the county. So what does the application look like? I can show you the tech platform in a second after I get done with this, or we can do it after questions. It's up to you, Madam Chair. But we really want to have a streamlined application. Again, the best way we can go about getting verifiable information, but not make the barrier to entry so high, so we can serve as many small businesses as possible. We want to see some basic financial documentation, at least 2 documents. You can see them listed out there. Based upon our experience, we know our selection committee, and Dante can talk more about this, that a balance sheet is highly encouraged. It's very helpful to the review committee. We want to see proof of financial impact, statement from the owner describing impact of COVID, and that they've complied with the executive orders to the best of their ability. Again, this was brought up at the sub-relief committee, or the relief subcommittee last week. We want to make sure that people have been following the rules, so to speak, that there's a scoring in there and they can attest to that. And then demographic information, we want to know where the business is owned, where it's located, the average hourly wage too, for their employees. Again, something we heard from the committee is we want to make sure that we have that information as we're reviewing the companies and organizations applying. Signed certification of all this by an officer of the company. We'll notify the applicants up front that the awards will be made public, and that translation interpretation services will also be made available. I think I get to it somewhere in this document, but I do want to point out that one of the things we did with our program that we want to do with this one is we're really going to help people fill out the application. So as we see them come through and an application is incomplete, we're going to have staff reach out to those applicants and help them through that process. Then once a grant or a business is selected, let's call it Jim Talon's Hair Salon, They're going to be agreeing to a one-on-one consultation, hopefully, that will review the 6-month cash flow projection requirements, et cetera. They do have to agree to some of this follow-up, though, because we do need to touch base with the company. So once we have a recommendation, the chamber will work with the selection committees. We'll send that for final approval to Kent County. Kent County then completes the agreement, the contract with the business. And working with staff, that will include clawback requirements for recipients included in the grant agreement. The Kent County delivers the check. Then we have follow-up. So 30-day evaluating the use, 60-day where we can provide some business assistance, and then 90-day check-in. I want to say that we're expecting, to have a number of businesses. Some of this we're going to do in more, in groups, so we can try to tackle what we expect to be that this fund is going to serve a large number of businesses. So we're going to have ways to tackle that. So Jim Talon's Hair Salon, day one, they complete the application with required documentation. We begin the review process. We want to have 6.5, 7 business days, make that commitment to review the application, have approval, denial. Then we go through orientation and execution of the grant with Jim Talon's Hair Salon. And then we'll do the 30-day check, 60-day, 90-day. We need to have transparent outcomes with these resources. That's key. So the online platform is going to allow for tracking and cataloging business feedback. So as we're doing consultation, we're going to be cataloging that feedback and the experience of businesses as we go along. And then the outcomes, we want to demonstrate, on the county's website and in other places, the sectors that we've served, the geographic distribution, the size of businesses, aggregated feedback on success failures of grantees, total numbers of jobs retained, numbers of businesses served, and then publicize the recipient list in batches. We do think that's important. It would be good to put it out at least batches of 100 as it goes out. And so then selection committees. Proposing selection committees comprised of 5 members. We'll have to start with at least a minimum of 5 selection committees, and that will likely need to be increased, of course, as the applicant pool grows. We want our partner organizations to nominate a board or community member to serve. I should also note that we're not excluding staff at all if they have a good, if they meet the skill sets we're looking for. We want to have people with strong financial background, business acumen, experience, community understanding, and very importantly, the time to serve. I heard the chair again, as we were looking to start, we got to get this done. We anticipate at a minimum, these folks that serve on the selection committee have to commit to 16 to 20 hours. And it's not over a month. It's going to be, in the next, couple weeks as we, once we launch, we're going to need their commitment of time. They're going to have to sign a conflict of interest, confidentiality statement, and commitment form. Because again, we want to build these selection committees to have broad representation. Some of these committees, though, you're going to have folks that know the community and that business well, so we're going to have those conflict of interest statements signed. People have asked about building these selection committees. So once we get nomination, I think it's going to be a lot like doing the wedding reception seating chart. Okay, so we're going to have to, really, massage that to make sure that, Aunt Betty and Grandma Joe can, work together at the different selection committees. So we have broad representation, based on geography, et cetera. We want to have a mix of business types and sizes that each committee is going to review, and they'll have the same number of reviewers. Committee of 5, you have to have a minimum of 3 reviewers recommending funding, or else you're going to be denied. And we want the pool of participants to generated from these following organizations. What I've included here are some other organizations, what you saw on the outreach list. So Kent County staff is specifically highlighted, City of Grand Rapids staff. I've added all municipal governments, of course, as well. So we really tried to have an exhaustive list here. We can, of course, add to it. And adding to it now, of course, is going to be most important. So in that review process, if you're selected to sit on the committee, you're going to have to attend to orientation and training, responsibilities, metrics, review process. You're going to have to understand how to use the technology platform, pretty easy to use. Then you'll be on the review team. You'll be given your batch of applications. You have to review them within 3 to 4 business days, score them, discuss them as a committee, and make recommendations. They're going to recommend funding or not funding. Chamber staff will coordinate that review process, will tally up the points, provide initial approval, and then send it to Kent County for final approval. We were also asked to, ballpark what the budget looks like here. The industry standard is 11%, maybe 10% of total budget. These numbers are much bigger than that. So looking at the chamber's billable rate and the level of expertise and the amount of staff, we're going to have to dedicate this to do it right, do it quickly. We're looking at, we proposed numbers for $10 million in grants and $20 million in grant. We want it to be an all-inclusive service proposal. So the outreach coordination, the process development, the review, the translation services, wraparound follow-up, reporting, technology platform, all these things we will include here in the services. And I'm about done. In the appendices portion, things we need to add to this document, again, that services agreement form or MOU form, we need to draft with Kent County. Kent County needs to draft, I think, the grant agreement, so we can see that still. And that, I think that's already in the works, maybe. And then we can have the finalized score sheet and Trello screenshots, which we can walk you through now. And then as we get feedback from this meeting, I think we just really need to detail that outreach plan a little bit further as we go forward. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll stop. I don't know if you would like to discuss portions of this plan now or
Yeah, I think we'll have a lot of discussion, but do you want to just quickly show us the technology and then we can go into questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Dante try and share that quick.
Okay, real quick. Yep.
So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I will looking to move this to the side a little. Is everybody still seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as you see, this is a online application, and let me do something real quick. Bear with me 1 second. I need to go back to the. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay, sharing screen now. Here we go. So as you can see, this is a very streamlined application, and we're utilizing a very secure platform, but a platform that anyone can access via their cell phone. Even as you can see, to the right, there's an image of a phone that anybody can access. As you can see, the first thing on here, there's a link for either English or Spanish. So if I were to click on Español, automatically it changes it all to Spanish. As Andy said, we would have multilingual capabilities. We were contracting with Voices for Help, which is a language services provider here in Grand Rapids that can help us with any additional languages that we may have. At the end of the day, we want to eliminate any and all barriers to this. So it's very easy to see the application. Let me go back to English. We'd have the application deadline about the application, and then right away, 2 staff people, staff person that are subject matter experts that have business backgrounds, but also are multicultural and understand our community and bilingual and so forth, that they can connect with at any point should they have any need for assistance with the application. It asks you to provide at least 2 financial documents and gives you a recommendation here. And then you can click to proceed. And I'm gonna quickly go through test, what my website would be. Did your business have between 0 and 25 full-time equivalents employees included owner on February 15th? This is asking both two of the three criteria, the employee size and the start date. And again, we can change the start date if you decide to have a different start date. So yes or no. And then is your business located within Kent County? Yes or no. Has the business already received PPP, SBA, MEDC, or other COVID support grant dollars? So if they were to click on this link, it would take them to another screen that will let them know that an additional phase will be added at the end for those that have already received funding. The first phase, we're recommending that is for those who have not received any of this funding. And we think that's important to make sure that we access those that are underserved, especially in our rural communities or inner cities, those that have not had access to any of the resources. So yes on that, yes on Kent County, no we have not. And then we move to about you, so business information, address, contact info, and so forth. And if you want, I can run through all the questions or just let you know that it asks all the questions that are based on the criteria and the metrics that we will require. I'd like to, and then at the end, it'll give you these are the next steps. This is when you're gonna connect with. And then we provide one of our staff persons contact info so they can, at any point in time, they can call and inquire, because that's also a very frustrating part, is not knowing, hey, submitted this application, what's happening, and so forth. So what I'd like to take you, so there's two platforms that we utilize. This Qualtrics platform is to do the intake, and as you can see, very easy to do. You can do it from your smartphone. You can take pictures of your financial documents and upload them. So again, eliminating any and all barriers. And now I want to take you to the platform we're going to utilize for the, let me go back to we're going to utilize for the scoring or for the review. Can everyone see the screen now?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So this is the technology we're going to utilize. It's called the Trello board. This houses all of the applications, and it also houses all of the attachments that they provide, the financials and so forth. But the actual documentation is housed within, it's called the QuickBase database that's very secure. One of the things that we want to maintain is confidentiality and integrity of the process and the system. So only the approved review committees can access this page, and they will log in and only see the applications and documentations for the grants that they're going to review, or for the grant applications. They don't see none other. We highly discourage having a review process where you're emailing documentations or you're scanning stuff and copying, making copies. That all that lends itself to disclosure of confidential information. We don't want to do that. These are very sensitive applications. So everybody comes on this site. We will have every review committee log in, or committee member log in and review the ones that they will go ahead and rate. Now, within each application is the rubric that will incorporate the pieces or the metrics that we've talked about and the different weights for each one of the questions. So at the end, they will tally up, the system tallies up the score, and it also tallies up the last question for the reviewer.
You froze for a second there, Andy. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Dante, Dante's been struggling a bit with his internet.
There he is. He's back now.
Okay, sorry about that. So my apologies. I'll end by saying that this platform is very secure and it allows us to have the reviewers tally up the score within each application and also assign a funding or not, or recommended for funding or not. We need 3 reviewers out of every committee, 3 of the 5 to recommend for funding for it to move on to execution.
All right,
Any
Chair,
questions?
we'll stop there. Let's have some discussion, I think.
All right, I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of questions. As usual, I kick it off while we get hands up. Wondering on the FTEs, does it make sense to, I know we're talking about groups under 25, and I know you talked about the wisdom in that. Does it make sense also for us to capture how many permanent full-time FTEs they have, but then maybe how many total employees they have? Because you might be able to find that you know, a business, you know, when you're making your determination and they each have 20 FTEs, but one employs another 30 part-time employees, that's a big difference and a bigger impact to the community. So I'm wondering if we could add something like that in there just to capture total employees in addition to just the FTEs.
Madam Chair, we can easily add a drop down for full-time
Yeah.
employees and then part-time employees. And
Yeah,
then,
because I just think that might be helpful when you're comparing apples and apples and all things being the same. It just you know, if they're employing more people and they're just not full-time, that's kind of a thought.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have questions? Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Thought if I delayed, there'd be somebody else, but so I have a number of questions. First of all, thank you, Andy and Dante, for this presentation and for your and the Chamber's willingness to step up and take this on. This is great work. One of the things that I'm wondering is, have you thought about by the nature of who you're defining in this, what kind of businesses are we likely to see applying here? So you said that there's about 25,000, I think, or 20 or 25,000 employers or businesses that might fit this profile. Who are we going to see? I know you mentioned Jim's hair salon. I know Jim doesn't have one yet, but would a hair salon even qualify? Because they've been closed through the COVID, so I'm not sure how they incur COVID expenses if they've been closed. But are these going to be principally minimum wage kind of employers, manufacturers? What do you anticipate?
So I can start us off, and Andy, you can add. We're going to see everything in the Rapid Relief Fund that we executed at the Grand Chamber Foundation. We saw a variety of different industries represented. We saw professional offices that were closed and had to go work from home, who saw 50% of the revenue just stop. We also saw, you know, your restaurants, your gyms, your retail that has zero revenue. And Commissioner, one of the things I do want to point out, even though you are closed, you're still incurring your lease, your insurance, there's a lot of expenses that still that you're still incurring. So but there is a difference from somebody who has a storefront, that the expenses they incur, from somebody who is working from home or is a home-based business, not just working from home, but it's home-based, that doesn't have, you know, maybe there are 2 or 3 employee business working from home. Their financial needs, even though they're hurting, will be very different than from a storefront, for example. We saw small manufacturing. We saw a lot of construction. Construction is down as well. We saw a variety of different businesses.
Is there thought in the criteria, or actually applying this, of assuring that we have a diversity so we don't end up with 90% of this going to one industry as opposed to assuring that we spread it across the board?
Yes, so that's why we're putting a lot of emphasis on the outreach and the front end of the process, because if we connect and partner with a variety of different organizations and geographic areas, that will ensure the diversity results that we want. Industries, geographic locations, but also even the sizes of businesses that we make sure that we go after. And you had a question on how many do we think there are, and I'll give you some numbers. This is from Reference USA, which is really the census for businesses. In Kent County, there are 29,678 businesses between 0 and 25 employees.
Sorry, 29,000?
29,678 between 0 and 25 employees. It jumps up about 1,500 businesses from 25 to 100 employees. Excuse me, 25 to 50 employees.
Okay. Okay.
As you can see, the majority are 25 and under,
Yeah.
but from 26 to 50, we do have about an additional 1,500 businesses.
So I did some quick math. If the average grant is $10,000, that's about 2,000 employers that we can reach. So it's still 10%, less than 10%.
Yep, less than 10%.
So I don't know how many questions I get, Chair. You cut me off when I'm done.
Go for it.
Okay.
And then we have Commissioner Talon after you.
Okay. You mentioned one of the criteria is that we're starting, that these businesses have to have started, of course, before March 15 or February 15, was it? That's just for qualification purposes. I would assume that if they started at that date, they're going to rate relatively low from an ability to establish their sustainability.
I think that's an important distinction here, because the eligibility, right, is if you don't click yes, you're totally out, right? And then we're going to score you, have you been around a long time? Are you sustained? Is Jim's Hair Salon employing 32 people? They've been around for 50 years. It's a place where the community gathers. They have a solid foundation, but they've been closed by the executive order, and the rent's due and all these other things are due. That hair salon is going to, score a little bit better, right, because of some of those factors.
Yeah, and I can support that as a criteria that doesn't disqualify an applicant, but at the same time, I would hope that the process really does put value in sustainability. In a brand new business, a very difficult time or difficult hurdle, it seems to me, to establish that sustainability criteria. And again, all of this is still to reimburse for expenses. So if we give a grant, do they have to provide receipts to confirm that documentation, to verify that these are in fact to cover receipts, and are they future receipts or past receipts or both?
I'm going to let Linda or Steve weigh in on that, maybe, just for the actual administration of the dollars.
Morning. What we've talked about is having all of the documents maintained by the applicant and available to us upon request, and to be held by the applicant for a period of time in case there's ever an audit as far as whether these funds were in fact used for COVID-related expenses. But to try and get all the documents in at the outset would be probably overwhelming, both in volume and in staff time. So there is a level of trust but verify built into the obligation of the applicants.
Okay.
And just to add to that, in the application, we do specify and ask them what the use of the funds will be. So they have to add the amounts and what it's going. And then at the 30-day check-in that we do, we do ask them, can you show us how the expenditure actually went?
Okay. So it could be for future expenses too, then, from the date of the grant.
Correct.
Okay, as long as they're incurred before the cutoff date of the code's limitation. So I think I just have two more. So the process of approval, I thought I saw in here that this would involve sending each of these recommended approvals to the county for final approval. Is that what you're contemplating, that someone at the county will do the final stamp that yes, all 2,000 or 2,500 of these are approved?
Yeah, the county's going to need to execute the contract and the agreement. They're holding the dollars, but again, I'll defer to Linda.
The thought process is that the recommendations come up through the chamber, through the selection committees. And then in order to make sure that we don't run into any hiccups with the funding source, the county will continue to hold all of the funds in its accounts because the chamber isn't the organization that actually has incurred the COVID expenses. So there's a little concern that if you were to turn the money over to the chamber for disbursement, that would open us up to a potential audit. So right now, the thought process is that the money would stay within the county. We've talked with Steve and Jeff on fiscal, and they're used to cutting checks, so the checks would be done there. But the approval process would be primarily through the chamber and its selection committees, because that's what they're set up to do, is to vet the applications and the amounts and make the recommendations.
Yes, I think I followed that. What I thought the submission, though, identified is that if you approve through the chamber's process, Jim's Hair Salon for a $10,000 grant, that has to come back or would come back to the county to say, yes, we agree, Jim's Hair Salon gets $10,000. And if so, who does that? Is that going to be a staff decision? Is that a board decision? Is that this committee's decision?
We can see it multiple ways, Commissioner, but the idea that each and every one of these grants would go through the finance and board process is not particularly workable. Unfortunately,
well, at least send it to finance, not to us at LHR.
Well, still, but if it goes to finance, are we taking it to the board? The idea is to take this agreement with the chamber through the finance and the board agenda so that everybody has a clear understanding of the setup, and two, agrees that these recommendations would come through the chamber and then be effectuated.
Okay,
If
but
the
again,
board wants to make changes to that for oversight, that's obviously up for discussion.
I'd like to keep us moving here. Commissioner Steck, do you have any other quick questions?
Just one last one. Is the cost to do this estimates or a fixed fee?
We would propose a fixed fee.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I want to just say initially, I'm so impressed with the work done on this proposal and this process. It hits so many markers for me, and I really appreciate it and want to recognize the excellent work that's been done. So thank you, Andy and Dante and rest of the staff. The one thing I want to raise, I have raised before, and that's the issue of how we utilize the expertise that is out there on the ground. And I want to ask for thoughts about that. It's not a slight to the Grand Rapids Chamber, but I think it's important that we acknowledge and affirm the expertise and the connections and the trust that other organizations can bring to this process. And if there's a way we can do that, and some of these organizations are really struggling because they're membership-based organizations, as the Chamber is, but they don't have as many resources, I don't think, as the Chamber. And is there a way that we can utilize them and offer some compensation for those things that they can really bring to the table, both to help the process, and I think it's really important to the community for us to be able to say, yes, we recognize what you can bring.
Commissioner Talon, I just want to say, and I don't expect the chamber to answer for us on that one, but once we get down to item 5, when we look at our, as we call it, the bucket list, but our allocation strategy, Wayman is going to talk a little bit about within this business line, we have talked about technical assistance, and I think that's where we can, just as the chamber laid out their technical assistance, we can help those organizations provide that. for their members. And that way, you know, we have assisted them, they've assisted us greatly, and we're able to do that over and above the dollar amount for the grant. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. If we can do it that way, I would still encourage then, I appreciate that that could be funded separately, and then would encourage the chamber to utilize those opportunities for technical expertise and technical support in the work that they're doing on this project. Thanks.
Yep. Commissioner Morgan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Really appreciate this presentation by Auntie and Dante. I have a question about the outreach and I guess the process and logistics. You know, this is going to be probably a pretty fluid situation as we work through this. We all know that, but can you just go over once again your process on your outreach, just a real summary of it, and I think putting it on you know, the phone app or whatever is extremely helpful to some of those businesses. And as we get along, I think that if we have to approve that, don't we have a mechanism in place now where Wayman can approve up to a certain amount of dollars, and along with the chair and the vice chair? So that's just up for discussion. But I'm particularly interested in your outreach and how you're going to try and get to the small businesses in the community. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. As you know, like a lot of this is hand-to-hand combat, right? And so it's getting the word out. It's trying to spread the word through all the different means necessary. Not everybody is going to get the newsletter from a entrepreneurial support organization, right? It's going to take phone calls. It's going to take people who know their communities walking up and down the street, and you know, walking down the main street of Lowell and going into Main Street Barbecue and saying, you need to be aware that this is open. And, you know, Liz Baker at the Lowell Chamber will have the resources to do that, because we want to take all the present people you've heard present, add others if we're missing them, because there are some smaller ones in there, get them to sign the services agreement. We train them, we get them the information, and then it's like, you know, trying to disperse this throughout every nook and cranny of the county. And that's why we want to employ municipalities in this too, because they know the fabric of their communities too. We put DDAs on there as well. We want to have the train the trainer before we launch, and then as it's, you know, as it launches, you know, get the word out the best we can, and then continue to follow up as we go forward. Sorry, Mandy.
Andy, you mentioned too, logistically, have everybody trained, have everybody ready to go, have the application ready, but then everybody goes at the same time, right? Like it's can you talk a little bit real quickly about that?
Yeah, we want almost like an embargoed press release, right? We want to have everybody to have the collateral, have the understanding, have, you know, these leaders, these grassroots leaders, understanding what's about to happen. And then once it clicks, we can let it go. Now, we know there's going to be an avalanche. We also don't want people to say, oh my gosh, I got to apply in the first 30 seconds. This is not like tickets to Elton John at Van Andel, right? This is like, here's our application window. We want you to fill the application out right. We're going to help you assist that. And then, you know, after that applications window is over, then we'll start our process. We've seen others, you know, processes overwhelmed, you know, with the needs. We want to make sure we have that time to help people through it.
Andy, and what I'll add is that we're also going to be very intentional in our game plan. We have in place working with our news media, not only the major ones, but the Latino media. I'm often doing segments with the El Informador and other news media in Spanish. We're also going to reach out to the Advance little newspaper that is in some of our communities, to the counties to the north and to the west of here. They have online platforms as well that it might take a little investment on our part to get it out there, but we're going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to be very intentional. The Grand Rapids Times, I mean, any and every media that we have, vehicle that we have to get an understanding of what the criteria is and what's the time frame and what documentation do I need to put in place.
So just so we're clear, you guys are going to do all that up front first before the application process open, before the
Correct.
open, enrollment period is opened. Okay. Commissioner Womack.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Villarreal and Mr. Johnston for such a great presentation. You've answered so many of the questions that I came to the table with today, and my colleagues have had some great questions, some that I was preparing to ask you. So I was very happy to see that you are intentionally making sure there is a path for these sole proprietorships that make up a lot of the businesses, especially in the smaller communities, to receive some COVID-19 help. So that was one of the things I was going to ask about. Also, with the CARES Act initiating from the federal level, is there any room for us to be more intentional with minorities and women businesses? And I'm asking because I know that's a very touchy situation here in Michigan, where affirmative action statewide has been eliminated. But when it comes to federal dollars, is there any room for intentionality with minorities? And have you thought about that, especially for the 49507, 49503, 49508 zip codes that are the highest impacted by COVID-19?
That's a great question, and I'll share with you. We ourselves, our core value is one of equity for all. We believe that if we have the strong outreach up front, that is really making sure that we have intentionality, making sure that our staff that's there to help and walk through the application process are bilingual, are representative of our communities of colors, understand the community. We feel the outcomes will be there. I'll share with you in our rapid relief fund that we executed about $1.5 million in funding. Over 50% of our recipients were businesses owned by people of color, minority-owned businesses, and that we didn't have any set-asides or anything that, or even in the criteria, we didn't have a race or ethnicity as a factor. However, with the right outreach and the right intentionality, the outcomes will come. And I'm very confident in the process that we have. But thank you for bringing that up, because that is definitely top of mind. These are our most vulnerable communities that we need to make sure that we have intentionality there.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Also want to thank Dante and Andy. Things have been awfully busy since our last meeting on Thursday in the community. And this is obviously a very impressive proposal here, and I appreciate all your what certainly was long and hard work. It definitely shows. A couple of questions that I had, in no particular order. The criteria section has the do goods and services provided by applicant positively contribute to the community's fabric, culture, and unique sense of place? Okay, I wonder if we can have just a little more detail on that, what that actually means, because I was under the understanding that this was going to be sort of a Good Samaritan question, because, I mean, look, almost by definition, if someone's buying your good or services, it's got benefits to the community. That's how the free enterprise works. So I wonder if that can be transformed to a little bit more about, since, you know, as Commissioner Steck points out, we're only going to be able to probably fund a small percentage, less than 25% of businesses. I think those who have given back to their community in different ways should maybe be at the front of that line. So if we can change that criteria to be a little bit more about community clearly about going the extra mile on community engagement, that would be great. I guess that's not a question, that's just an ask.
Sounds like a friendly amendment, potentially.
Friendly amendment. There's no such thing. I want to go back to what Dante was saying a little bit. Obviously, I see, obviously, you have a track record with the previous private grant system of being very successful at making sure that businesses led by people of color have that are most impacted in communities that are most impacted by the virus get a commensurate share of the funding. And I know that there's going to be a really robust communications program to try to make sure that the applicant pool looks like the county. But I just wonder that there's some certain obvious geography, some certain obvious zip codes where these, and let's face it, relatively small grants are going to be most impactful at keeping businesses afloat, and where the impact has been greatest, but also the difficulty in getting back is going to be greatest, because those are communities that are seeing impact from unemployment. And so if there are fewer consumers in those neighborhoods, it's just going to be harder for them to get back on their feet. So I know we have to be legally careful on this, but I think some conscious and intentional effort to give some preference. I mean, we want to be countywide. This is a county program, but some preference to the geographies that are most hit. And I understand everyone's been hit by the executive orders, no matter how necessary they were. That those that were hit hardest by the pandemic and are going to have the hardest coming out of it, that be a clear criteria. Again, I don't know if there was a question there or if it was just an ask.
Well, I think, Commissioner Skaggs, I think what you are getting at is something that I was concerned about too. And I don't know if this is a question for the attorneys, because we did, I was concerned about how are we capturing demographics and how do we know it's going to those zip codes most affected, and how do we, and I know that the attorneys looked at the way that the chamber has worded some of the application process. So I don't know if someone from Warner or if Linda wants to discuss that, or if there's ways we can further enhance that without violating any type of direction and law or rules. Does that help, Commissioner Skaggs?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw that over to Matt Nelson, because he and the guys at Warner have specifically looked at some of those questions.
Right. So when we went through this process with the chamber, discussing their proposal, we asked a number of questions with regard to ensuring that there were not the barriers to entry that were identified in earlier programs that have gone through, be that the PPP process at the federal level, or even the Coronavirus Relief Fund uses in other locations. Trying to build out a model that was comprehensively inclusive without running afoul of Michigan's constitutional amendment or the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. So we had those different pieces in play. One of the things that was discussed yesterday, you heard a little bit about it today, is this question of, do we set the first phase so that for the first phase of this, you can't get access to the funds if you've already received PPP or other relief funds, because that should then reserve the funds for those people who've had the most trouble getting to the front of the line. Based on the Chamber's experience so far, they don't think that it's going to be necessary to try to tie things to specific geographies. That's going to end up creating complications in terms of administering the process that are out of proportion to the potential benefits, where they've seen that they've gotten a good geographic spread. And in fact, we reviewed the geographic spread by zip code of the Chamber's grant program the earlier rapid response program, and they did have a very good geographic spread into some of those areas that were most impacted by the COVID-19 public health crisis. So from our perspective, we think that the proposal has the pieces in it to ensure that the equity concerns, I think, Commissioner Skaggs, that you're raising will be addressed without the need to try to artificially tie it to specific zip codes. But I'm happy to answer any additional questions about that. And obviously, Andy and Dante jump in, especially if I misstated anything.
I would just echo that those vulnerable communities that we are concerned about, they are the ones who have not accessed any type of funding as of now. And if we put them in the front of the line, I think that will ensure the outcomes that we need to make sure that are there.
Okay, great. That sort of leads me, I guess, into a third question. Is will this subcommittee or some committee of the board be getting some level of periodic reports from the chamber? You talked about releasing to the public, which I think is great, the people that are getting it. And I don't know what the chair's plans for this subcommittee are after Thursday, but it would be nice to have some report to some elected officials about where the money is being spent that would break it down by geography.
Oh, yeah. No, so we haven't gotten that far, but my intention was that not only will we get reports, I mean, this plan will have to go through board. So we will be doing that with hopefully the subcommittee stamp of approval. And then with the 30-day, the 60-day, the 90-day check-ins, I would expect that the chamber would report to Steve or Jeff or someone, and they would report out, or we bring the chamber in. But absolutely, we will have very, very transparent, specific report outs, and we can put that right in the contract and perfectly fine with that. In addition to that, and we need to talk about this later in the agenda, which I hope we eventually get to, we need to do a very, very robust audit plan, and all this is getting audited. Anyone who thinks they're not going to get audited is crazy, because this is all going to be very transparent. So this is all going to get looked at several times. So you got the initial look at from the chamber, then the selection committee looks at this, then the chamber makes the recommendation, then the county looks at it again, and then we will get a report out. So it will be a pretty robust reporting system.
And I would just mention, Commissioner, that Wayman, as we built this, is that county staff is going to be entrenched and engaged in the process as we go forward.
And I would add, Andy, that at different stages of this, not just at the end, we can provide updates or reports, the number of applications received, number of applications completed, number of applications reviewed, approved, and as it goes through the process, and we can do the same demographic breakdowns of all that applied versus all that completed, all that reviewed, et cetera.
So that's great. I appreciate your response to that, Chair. And yeah, if we can get that into the contract, that there would be, some periodic reporting to elected officials on the board, that would be really helpful. Just one last thing, the rest of them I'll send in an email. There doesn't appear to be any criteria about job retention. Am I missing something? You're asking about, how many employees did you have? How many live in Kent County? Is there any, are we going to be collecting the information and considering it as part of criteria, as sort of how many employees did you have, before March 1 or February, whatever we were going to use? And how many employees do you anticipate being able to retain?
Yep, that is part of the application. We do ask that because it's part of the reviewers to determine how many jobs are we retaining here? If they're going to bring back, 50% of their workforce, 75, 100%. So we do ask that.
Okay.
The only thing I have concerns with that is I don't want it to be like the PPP system where you're stuck in a rut where you got this money and then all of a sudden things have completely changed, and to stay afloat you can't keep everybody. But that, I just want to, it's fine if it's a selection criteria question, but I don't want it to be punitive.
Correct.
No, I agree with that.
And
Okay.
we'll follow up in the reviews to gauge where they're at too.
Right. Commissioner Breivy, for one last question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's been mentioned already, but when you do the marketing and publicizing this money, I would really like to see something about it saying that it's for everyone, not specifically chamber members or members of these supporting organizations.
Yep.
I think it's really important for people to know that this is available to all small businesses in the county that meet this criteria. So
in addition to that, in our toolkit for our partners that are going to help us with the outreach, we're going to be asking them not to reference their memberships, but to reference their business communities. So everybody starts hearing that. And that's what we did with our rapid relief, open to everyone, regardless if they're member or not, or part of the DDA or whatever. But it's important for us to be intentionality with the words we use. So thank you.
Okay. I think that, Commissioner Womack, one more question.
Yep, quick question. Will those that receive funding from the rapid relief funds be eligible for this?
So in the first phase, we're going to ask that it's for those that who have not been able to receive funding. And then in the second phase, yes, they would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't think there are any other questions for Andy and Dante. I just want to acknowledge the incredible amount of work that went into this plan. Thank God we have you in Grand Rapids, and you both and all your team, and your willingness to do this and throw this together very quickly, and with everything going on over the weekend. Just really, really appreciative of both of you and the rest of the team. So thank you for that, and we will be following up with you, I assume, very shortly regarding the contract and everything like that. But we need to vote on it first. So.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say that every day matters. We really believe that the need is huge, and we're ready to go. And we made it a priority to be ready to go because we know how important this is right now for the business community. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, with that, I would like to garner support from subcommittee members to entertain a motion to enter into a partnership with the Chamber for the business relief support program.
So moved.
Support by Womack.
Moved by Commissioner Morgan, support by Commissioner Breivy. Any other questions or comments on this before we vote?
Commissioner Stack?
Sure.
Is this going to come back with a draft MOU for us to final approve, or this is the authorization and we'll let staff carry it from here?
I would like to authorize this based on all the criteria and let staff proceed.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Diane here. Diane here with a quick question. Does this make the amount set in stone that they will be executing?
We haven't discussed the amount yet. We're getting to that on item 5 of our CARES funding allocation strategy. This is to engage in the partnership based on the presentation given today.
Just a question, if the amount of grants that can go through them increase more, will their fee change?
It's within the contract. It's in the information that they shared. Yes.
They shared the information.
Well, I think I heard him say up to 20 million. What if we do 25? Is there a way for us to comfortably adjust that if it's higher yet?
I don't know if they're on the phone, but we will let him. I would assume we would let Wayman.
We'll work on that. We'll negotiate that. We want to make sure that we get the service that we need, and we don't want to cramp them up. So yes, we will work on that. Make sure that it's not difficult
Thank you.
for them.
Any other questions or comments? It's 11:15 and we've got a lot more to get through today. Questions, comments? Don't see any hands. All right, I'll just run through this. Just indicate your up or down support. I support it. Commissioner Steck.
I support it.
Commissioner Jones.
I support it.
Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Morgan.
There you go. Here he is.
Yes.
Commissioner Breve.
Yes, I support it.
Commissioner Talon.
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Womack.
Support.
All right. Hallelujah. We got that done today. All right. So with that, we will be having staff and formally engage with the chamber on that, and we will be finalizing hopefully a number today, later down in the agenda here. And my intention would be that we would have something more formal in the formalized subcommittee report for us to review on Thursday. But I just wanted to get this process going. So with that, let's—
Chair?
Sure, Commissioner Talon.
Just a procedural question. I apologize. Apparently my microphone was muted before. My understanding is that what we just did was advisory to the administrator, similar to what we've done in the past. So this was a decision, but it was really advisory to Wayman, and then he will do the advising process that we approved in the past. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to item 4, local unit government feedback. Wayman?
Can we get that report up? Okay, looks like it's coming up. Madam Chair, this is the most recent up-to-date input we received from all of the townships, cities, and villages. You have it in front of you here. We did still have a few that did not respond, but I think we're past now that step, because we did several times go back out and made sure that anyone that didn't receive anything, that it wasn't because of us, it was maybe because they just did not want to respond, because some of them have said that they do not have any expenses for which they are seeking reimbursement. So therefore, no need to push it out again. So I think we're good right now with the totals that are—
No, this looks like an old one, because you've got Grand Rapids at 35.5 million, and we've got Algoma still at 500,000. We've got
this, correct me if I'm wrong, is MB, are you there? Is this the latest document?
Yeah, this is the latest document. So Algoma did revise some of their numbers, I believe on the left-hand side, the 95 was an increase. And the city of Grand Rapids, Jeff Dodd is going to report out on that separately, because there have been several communications with the city.
I'm totally confused at what I'm looking at then. What is the difference between the left 2 columns and the right 2 columns?
So on the left-hand side is total expenditures that they had already incurred during March and April. And then we had asked them, because the survey was sent out May 1, to put in their projected expenditures for May through the end of the year, according to the CARES Act.
I'm still very concerned about some of the outliers. I don't understand how Ada could spend 3,000 and Algoma Township could spend 95,000. I think that we really need to take a much deeper dive into this. None of this makes sense to me.
Well, we are only as good as the information we receive. So Algoma Township provided this information late last week, Thursday, Friday. So we do need to dig into their rationale for the numbers, much like what we did with the city of Grand Rapids over the weekend and yesterday. City of Grand Rapids, Jeff can explain, but we did meet with Mark Washington. We did meet with his staff on Friday, and we did meet again. Jeff did meet again yesterday, and their numbers are different than what's showing here today, but we just have not updated them. I'm waiting for feedback from Mark Washington as we speak. Sent him an email or a text message this morning just to verify where he's at. That number's come down quite a bit because of the overlap that we had anticipated. So Jeff, you want to speak to that?
Sure, if I can unmute. Yeah, Molly, our CFO, and I worked quite a bit yesterday. Her and I have agreed on a number that we think is appropriate. It got sent over to Mark and Eric yesterday, late yesterday afternoon. I've not heard an official word back from them if they agree with the number or not, so I don't want to report out on it quite yet. The other piece of information that's very important we received, I think late last Friday, is new guidance from Treasury. And they've stated that states that received an allocation for CARES Act, which Michigan did, should distribute a portion of that to the locals. So I know that would have a big impact on us, Kent County's portion, that we would not need to distribute to the locals under that scenario. So they are still waiting to hear back from the state if they're going to proceed with that guidance from Treasury. So.
Okay. Any questions on this item?
Chair.
Commissioner Skaggs?
Jeff, could you repeat that? I'm not sure that I got that, but that sounded very important. You said that the state would be sending money to municipalities?
Yeah, the new guidance from Treasury says if all the states that received a distribution should distribute, I think it's 45 cents of their portion to all the locals based upon population.
45%. Yeah.
45%, yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's really the state's call and how they're going to manage that. So at the end of the day, it's really the city's responsibilities or any other municipality's responsibility to pursue them. We talked with Mark and his team about that. We did get clarification on that. But again, it's really, we can't tell the state what to do. They simply have to make those decisions at their level.
But we have to be concerned that we might be duplicating delivery
Yes.
to municipalities.
Correct.
And Jeff, you're saying that under these new guidelines, we are not supposed to send money to municipalities?
It doesn't say we can't. No, it just says the states are supposed to.
No, and the guidelines say that we may provide. It didn't say we must provide.
Correct.
And that's the tack we're taking along with Oakland County, Wayne County, Macomb County. Very similar approach.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item of the agenda?
Commissioner
Morgan?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just gonna say that I don't believe that some of these townships and maybe the city of Grand Rapids fully understood the terms or the requirements of this funding mechanism. Just leave it at that. But what are we going to do with this now? I mean, you have Grand Rapids Township with $0 and Algoma with 95. How are we gonna rectify that?
Well, there's a number that. Go ahead.
How are we going to reconcile that? And Grand Rapids going from, I don't know, 35 million down to 1.7. That's really kind of interesting. But
11 million, 11.1, was it, Jeff? 11.1 million. I think that's.
Well, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
How are we going to reconcile all of this?
Well, the staff's going to do what we've done with the city. Every municipality that's provided those numbers, we're going to go back and we're going to ascertain whether or not there's overlap, Roger, and make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, and we're going to validate. That's what we're going to do before those checks are sent. That's what we need to do. I think the buckets that we're talking about here, last time we met, there were 17 million. That number, based on the recent conversation with the city, could change one way or the other. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Steve's got that number out there posted on this new allocation plan strategy that we've got. But within that number, there could be less than the amount that's in the bucket once we get through our assessment and evaluation in terms of dollars that are actually sent to these local municipalities based on the homework we're going to go through.
Sure, I understand this is very fluid. I hope the other my colleagues understand that too.
Right. So there may be more money on the table for some of the businesses or some of the other buckets that you've decided to make moves on.
Well, but what my understanding is now that this is closed, right? I mean, the the application or for this money, the deadline's passed, correct?
I believe it's a
But-
very firm. I would say based on the feedback that I'm hearing from my board, there could be ones or twos that are out there that haven't, for whatever reason, provided us the intel. We'll keep working it, but we've given folks 3-4 weeks now to get information into us. I don't know how long you want to drag this out.
We asked for deadlines 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The other thing I would like as an indicator moving forward is the zeros. I do want to know that they just declined or they just haven't.
And what we can do is send them an email to say, this is what you submitted. We want to get a firm yes or no that this is what you submitted, so we don't have to come back to this again.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do.
I feel like this is Groundhog's Day with this issue, and we've done it several times.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point we got to fish or cut bait. So.
Yep.
So if I have your permission, we can send this out to them. This is what you submitted, and yay or nay, and we move on, and then we determine based on what we find out about the overlap and whether or not those expenses actually comply with the guidelines from CARES Act. That's what we will do. But this is the raw information that we've received.
All right, very raw. Any other questions? It looks like Commissioner Steck and then Commissioner Talon, and we really need to start moving on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just, I am still a little uneasy with the discrepancy clearly between what these various municipalities are using to measure these numbers, but as long as we've given them the opportunity to do it, so be it. But and I think we do need to put a number on the bucket for municipalities, but I'm also still unclear as to what this new direction from the state allocation of the CARES fund means. If they are being directed to go ahead and make an allocation to the municipalities, when will they do that? Will we know that before we have to make our call? Go ahead.
They have the same information that we have. They've had this information. This was in the earlier FAQs related to state providing funding to municipalities. It was on the 7th page of the FAQ that was provided. But we again received an additional FAQ on the 28th that had reiterated the same that we understood to be the case even back several weeks ago. So they have the same information. They have not yet, to my knowledge, responded to that and provided funding to local municipalities. That's a decision that they will have to make themselves.
And we have no idea as to when the state will make that decision?
I have calls out to the Treasury. We've asked for that information. I'm hoping we would hear something back from our lobbyist on that, but we have asked. Where is that at, and what is the state going to do? I have not heard back yet.
And what about municipalities outside of Kent County that don't have the county allocation? Are they going to get funding, or we don't know?
Those municipalities outside of the county are no different
Only
than
through the state.
Yeah, yes, that would be the way it would be right now. The CARES Act is out there. The HEROES Act, there's another potential funding stream that could come from the feds that could deal with direct payment to local units of government, municipalities, cities, townships, and villages. But that has not been approved out of the federal government yet.
Again, I'm most comfortable putting the number on the bucket, but would like more information before we actually spend it as to how that's going to interplay with the state. Thank you.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say now, and I'm going to probably say it a few more times, I am extremely uncomfortable putting a number on this local units bucket until I know what the city of Grand Rapids is saying and what that negotiation is. That's really disconcerting to me that we don't have that yet. And I realize that there were communication problems, partly on our side, and that we're still working through it, but I need to see that.
Well, we have communicated with them, Commissioner Talon, last week, Friday. We met with them in the morning. We met with them in the afternoon on Friday afternoon, and we met again yesterday. And I sent an email to City Manager Mark Washington this morning, or a text message. So we're pushing, attempting to pull confirmation on the number as you've asked us to do. I will follow up again today.
And I'm not suggesting that attempts aren't being made. I'm just simply saying the timing is such that since we don't have that information, it's hard for me to make a decision. I wasn't criticizing the process, just that I can't.
I can tell you that we cannot continue to wait around to put some semblance of guidance together. These aren't carved in stone numbers. This is a guidance plan that we are trying to push, and if we wait around, nothing gets activated. I think we're jumping a little ahead. I would like to move on. We've got another person that has a question, but we're bleeding into the next agenda item, which we will get a little bit more robust detail on. But again, I mean, we could sit here and wait for weeks more. We waited 3 weeks for everyone to submit their numbers, and then we're waffling around as to how accurate they are. We're not approving the dollar amount with the check to cut this week. It's literally a guidance.
Yeah,
this is all very fluid.
Yes, yes.
Commissioner Womack, and then I would like to move on, please. Commissioner Womack.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for clearing some of that up. That answered some of my questions, so I can delete those and be short. Is there any consensus on how much time the city of Grand Rapids and these other cities and municipalities will have, as this deadline has already passed?
Well, there's been significant, I would say, significant headway made with the city of Grand Rapids thus far. You know, with everything that happened this weekend, I can tell you that they are just not in a position to focus their attention on all of these things. So we need to relax on giving them time. I think by the end of the day, hopefully we'll hear back from the city manager from Grand Rapids. I think that's what we have to be careful of. And like I heard Chair Boulder say, this is really, it is a flexible situation right now. We just need to put a frame around it. We have a process. We're hoping that we get this netted out for you by Thursday. Everyone would have had hopefully plenty of time to confirm the numbers, and I believe Thursday we will be in a much better place. And that's my prediction.
You're just looking for a placeholder, right, Wayman?
Yes.
Just
yes.
a placeholder. That's all we're doing.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Britt. You took the words right out of my mouth with what they were going through this weekend.
Yes.
It just has been incredible pressure on the city manager, and I'm ready to vote today because I'm very happy that Madam Chair has expressed exactly the framework on what we're voting on. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Britt.
Any other questions on what is in front of our face on the screen? Okay. Can we go back to the agenda? We're going to move on to item 5, and I think this is where we're going to get a lot of questions answered. I would like to somehow approve this guidance so that staff can then work on a finalized report for us to approve on Thursday so we can get it to the board as soon as possible. So with that, Wayman, let's move on to item 5.
All right. Can you pull that up? Thank you.
Allocation strategy.
Yes. Now, Steve, I'm going to have you take us through this because you're most familiar with it. So please proceed. The changes that were made, why the changes were made, and hopefully we'll get the board's consensus on moving this forward. Steve?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. You're all familiar with this document. We've looked at it over the last couple of weeks. I did tweak the formatting a little bit, trying to make it a little bit more user-friendly. But I will go through with that. The significant changes are since the last time you saw this document. Starting at the top, county expenses have been reduced from 40 million to 35 million. That's at least in part due to a change in the information I've received from the Sheriff's Department yesterday afternoon, where they dropped their estimate of cost from 12.7, I believe, to 11.2 million. It also meant that I've reduced the unallocated within county expenses from 8.3 million to 4.6 million. We believe right now that 4.6 is enough, but we still got to get some additional handle on some of the additional costs. They won't be as large as our frontline department, but we will still have some costs in juvenile detention, parks, medical examiner that we need to pull together. I think they'll fit within that, but we won't know that absolutely until we get all that put together. Moving down to community investment, that went up from 40 million to 59 million. And we'll go over what the major changes were. Under business assistance, small business grants, loans, and technical assistance was increased from, I believe, 10 million to 25 million. The return to work, PPE has been left at 2 million, so I believe we may have to revisit that. We opened up our PPE program yesterday. We had a great response. Over 200 organizations contacted us yesterday. I expect we'll have a report on that shortly for the county administrator to share with you. Moving further down under the homeless and affordable housing strategy, the 3.5 million has been reduced to 1.5 million, and that's because of our discussion with City of Grand Rapids. They will put $2 million towards this program, and in return for that, we are, if you look at county expenses and talk about the homelessness population, we are going to fund Fulton Manor, which in the previous, the predecessors, to the tune of the expected $4.3 million. So we still got the same commitment. We just got a portion of those funds coming from Grand Rapids. Obviously, we're waiting for the final on that, but that is our expectation. Going down to the care for vulnerable populations, I consolidated a couple of items from the last time. We had a basic community needs and communication and information guidance, and we also had childcare. We have dealt with the childcare issues through a different vehicle, and we consolidated those funds into 10 million for the not-for-profits program assistance. The idea would be that we probably would identify a community partner and get a proposal put together similar to what we saw for the chamber to help distribute those funds and meet the needs within the community. Finally, the assistance, I shouldn't say finally, net assistance to the local units of government was decreased from 17 million to 15 million. That rides on the huge reduction that was negotiated with Grand Rapids yesterday. So we would be in a position to fund 11 million for Grand Rapids and remaining charges from the other organizations in the neighborhood of 4 million. That would leave us with 94 million allocated. Unallocated would then come down to 20 million, 533, 581. We have tentatively set a target for the second wave for 20 million. That would leave, if you buy into that, that would leave us about $533,000 to be allocated yet. Unless there's questions, that is what I plan to cover today.
Mandy, you're on mute.
I'm usually the one to tell everybody that. Okay, so I know we've got questions. It looks like Commissioner Jones had her hand up.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I'd really like to get my handle on the process for this and making this final. What are our options? Does it have to go to finance and then the board? Given the circumstances, can we go right to the board where everyone will have input at that point? I just want to know from Linda, from Wayman. Wayman mentioned today in finance that it would go to finance first, in which case are we set with that? And are we going to set a special meeting for finance prior to the June 11th board meeting? That's what I really need to know.
Yeah. So this framework, if you will, that we are discussing, this allocation strategy is something that we need from this subcommittee this week. The plan would be then, once we have your agreement with this strategy, it will not need to go to the board for formal approval, because we have the executive committee, we have several other committees on on the 2 standing committees represented. We know then this is what the wishes of the board is in terms of the framework that we've got. But for these different contracts or these decisions to move money into agreements with folks, those will be taken individually through the board process, through finance, through the board to allocate those dollars. That's what we're thinking of here. Now, here's the other glitch here. Like we experience with the small the PPE for small businesses. If you and the board chair or others are feeling that we need to move sooner on some of these allocations, we do have the ability through the resolution to take some of these through sooner. But I would rather take these through the finance committee than the board as we formalize the specific agreements that we would be moving the monies forward. That's my recommendation.
Okay, Commissioner Stack.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. 2 questions. One, economic stabilization, 2 million. Just quickly, what is economic stabilization?
Steve, you want to talk about economic stabilization? Steven? Steve, you got your mic on? You got your mic muted.
I'm muted, I'm sorry. The economic stabilization was to work with organizations perhaps like the Right Place, or in some cases, maybe the Experience Grand Rapids, providing some additional support to the community.
We've received information from both Right Place, from the Experience Grand Rapids. We want to make sure that when we come out of this opportunity that we are not sluggish in our ability to attract and retain business. So they are our partners. They're our economic development arms, no different than what our health department, all of our departments are. We want to make sure that they are provided the supports. The Right Place in particular has stood up processes to vet small businesses loans. We need to make sure that they are in a position to continue to do their work.
So it's a holding number at this point, to be detailed later. The other question I had is on the 20 million reserved for second wave. If we approve this allocation, I guess I'm not quite clear. What if there isn't a second wave of substance that requires that kind of money? How are we going to? Because it sounds like it's basically a holdback pending subsequent needs, and if it isn't needed, we'll spend it out a different way.
Yeah, the best intel we have today is what we've received from the health department, from the sheriff's department, but we don't know what this condition is going to be like over the next several weeks. Adam, are you on the phone? Maybe you could get into that right now. Adam did provide a robust detail of the expenses. Adam, could you share what we talked about this morning, please?
Sure. Good morning, Wayman. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, there are, of course, a lot of unknowns that we have going forward. We've got a wide variety in what might happen going forward, and that might include things like new testing strategies. In fact, I got just this morning a 6-page new matrix of testing priorities from the state of Michigan that will affect our costs. We may have new technologies, antibody screening, or other things that come along. We may have new opportunities with other partners that develop in the course of the next few months in order not just to deal with a second wave, but to prevent a second wave. So, you know, the budget that we create at the health department is really focused on what our assumptions were at the time of that budgeting process in early April. And I think our budget numbers are pretty good. I think we're going to live within those numbers, but I am very comforted to know that we have this reserve in case we do have other things, opportunities, or problems that develop over the course of the next 6 months.
Yeah. And I understand that makes sense. I guess I'm wondering what, from a procedural point of view, what do we do with this $20 million? If once we approve it, is that it? And now it'll subsequently get spent in some ways, or is it going to come back to this committee for subsequent determination or back some other place?
Once we have your approvals, your support for the buckets today or this week, Thursday, those will be held in abeyance. Again, those dollars will need to be spent out based on the intel that we're receiving. For instance, PPE, we don't know whether or not the 2 million is enough for PPE or for small businesses, whether that's enough, or whether it's enough for the municipalities. So that will give us the latitude to bring it back to you. Once we know what the buckets are, we can then be more specific about the individual asks that we will come back. And then of course, then the numbers will go up and down based on what we are recommending as formal allocation requests to the committee, or to the board.
So in reality, this is a reserve for any subsequent
Yes.
shifting in need.
Yes.
Any other questions, Commissioner Steck? No, you're on mute.
No, thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, just want to follow up on that briefly. What is our, and then I'll have my own longer things. What is our drop dead date then, where if we don't see a second spike, or we do and we get additional funding, given that, right, we have to spend this 114 million by December.
Right.
And we give any thought to like, okay, it's October 1st, it's November 1st, it's something.
Yeah.
Let's push this out before we have to
Yes.
send it back to
Yes,
DC.
absolutely. So, Commissioner, this is this fluid process that we all are facing. The Oakland, Wayne, Macomb are all dealing with the same issue. We don't know when the drop dead is going to be, but I would say, like you're mentioning, October comes around, we ought to have a pretty good idea about where those dollars are going to be spent by October. But we're looking at it in July. We're looking at it in August. But October is kind of like the trigger for me to say, look, we need to make sure that we put the dollars out there so that these dollars get spent. We don't want a dime of the 114 to be left in our books. We want it all spent.
So do we want to make October 1 like a revisit or a?
Yeah, I would say yes, to give at least a couple of months, because the deadline to get all these dollars spent is December 30th. That gives us a couple of months to get it out the door. I would say we definitely want to have a report out from us about where we're at, and then seize the opportunity where we've been delayed or we felt unsure, and now we're going to make those decisions now. Because I'm going to tell you, there's more need out there than 114.6. We just want to be very careful about how we spend it, and so that we don't get any, clawbacks and criticism from the community as well as from the feds about how we spend our dollars. And
yeah, and I'm very concerned about how low the PPE number is. I mean, that was like a first wave, and we haven't allocated more money there.
We just started on this process. Like you said, again, we did a soft kind of communication yesterday. There was 300 and some people already, communicating back with us. And then today was the formal day. So we're going to see a ton of requests out there, guys. I think it's beyond the 2 million that we're going to see a need for over a period of time, but it's just to get us started. Cal got the orders out there and he's got the logistics company in place, so we're ready to roll, but that number could change.
Okay, so that's something that maybe we can see on Thursday, because we're starting to reallocate all this money now. It would be nice to have whatever additional placeholder we want to put, knowing that we can transfer funds out of the unallocated or out of the second wave fund there later.
Right.
3 other quick questions, if I may. One, Adam, is this enough for for testing and tracing, and have we moved to professionalize our contact tracing response?
We believe this is enough based on the assumptions and the variables that we see right now. We are bringing in staff from Maxo and other temporary firms, and we have brought in staff from Spectrum Health that are helping us with contact tracing and testing. And I expect that we're going to see more of that as we move our own staff back to the programs that they were originally assigned in. But I think that our numbers are sufficient based on what we expect with those variables in mind. And Gail Brink's on the call. She can talk a little bit more about those if you want more detail about those assumptions. But I do think that we have great range of variability in what might happen because we just don't know based on the fact this is a novel virus and that pandemic that we haven't seen before. So it is comforting to know that we have some additional in reserve in case things go beyond this budget.
Okay, because I think that testing and tracing is the most important thing that we're doing here as far as, ensuring consumer confidence so that we can get everything back to working again. So please, do not hesitate to come to us to help, spend any money that you need to implement those programs. I guess two other quick things. One, under the Care for Vulnerable Populations, Steve, we've mixed childcare in with the not-for-profit assistance program, and I think that's great that we're going to have a separate program similar to the Chamber's program for our nonprofit partners in our public-private partnerships. But can we see that get teased out just a slightly bit more than what the amount would be for that program? And then we're still at $4 million for childcare expenses that we talked about.
Yes, we can do that. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just reading the closed caption as it comes up. Yes, what the thought was there are a lot of things that we may need to do in the community that we can't do ourselves. We could do it if we had adequate staff, that we would be able to contract with various agencies to do that, whether it was further contact tracing or other distribution, PPEs to nonprofit, because everything we're seeing up above is for-profit companies, and we may have some other activities that we may want to support in the community. That's the best I can give you for right now.
And we can give you the details from the child care community so that you have the latest numbers that we have. I thought we had provided that, but maybe not. We can get that detail to you.
Okay, thank you, Wayman. And then lastly, it's obviously very important. One of the key functions of county government is to make sure that we remain a vibrant democratic system. So I think that at least some of this unallocated money should be just tagged as money that's going to possibly be used to make sure that we can support our municipal governments and our clerk, and making sure that we have make sure that everyone has the real genuine ability to exercise the right to vote in the safest way possible, be that absentee ballots or whatever measures need to be taken at precincts. So I wonder if that's something that can be looked into. I know that the Secretary of State is looking at that, at doing a bunch of that work, but certainly some of it may flow down to us. So I'm just would like to see some of that money that's being held in reserve, be looked at for, doing that once we get to, I don't know if that would be August or whenever we would have to start to pull the trigger on these.
I'm very uncomfortable earmarking this additional $20 million for other things like that until we know more. But obviously, if mail-in ballots or whatever process we're using becomes a county cost to the county, then that would be what we would apply this some of this 20 million toward. But we don't even know that that's a cost yet. So I really do not want us to get into earmarking possibilities until we know a little bit further what that might be. If it's a county cost and we have to pay it and the state's not going to cover that, which I don't know that to be true, then I mean, if they got $3 billion, if that's what they're going to do, then they should probably cover that cost. But I really don't want us to get in the weeds on earmarking possibilities for this future fall additional funds.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to be earmarked. I don't know if that's a word I use. It's possible that I did, but I do think it needs to be on the burner of things that we're considering might be necessary for future funds.
Yeah, and it's going to be a cost to us. So if it's a cost to us and we have to pay that cost, then obviously that's a COVID-related cost that we could apply this to.
Right. And we'll work with the cities and local jurisdictions if there are needs that they have. And we did hear from the city of Grand Rapids regarding a location that they thought would be more conducive for the balloting and so forth for the elections. And so within their dollar amounts and then what we have within the clerk's budget, the county's budget, we should be able to manage what needs to be done to make sure that there's successful elections that occur. So I don't see a problem with that. One way or the other, we're going to make sure that it happens.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Just what's before us here with this allocation strategy, I'm really comfortable with, and I think a lot of work's been put into this. As far as process goes, I'm thinking, if I weren't on this committee and I'm a sitting commissioner representing 30,000 folks, that I think perhaps I'd want to go on record supporting this $114 million project. So how much of a delay would it be if we were to run this through, just it comes out of committee and then goes through our process? I guess I'm not adverse to having my colleagues vote to get their support for this, or non-support, but I guess with a program of $114 million and not having the opportunity, if I didn't sit on this committee, of voting on it as it come out of the committee, I think I'd want to weigh in on that. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was very confused by that as well. The intention in my mind of this subcommittee and this report we're going to vote on Thursday was like other subcommittees where we report it to full board and they accept the subcommittee up or down. I mean, I don't know why we would not do all that.
I'm just looking. Okay, so maybe I'm confusing everyone here. Tuesday, June 16th is the next finance committee meeting. Tuesday, June 16th. The next board meeting.
But Wayman, but does the full subcommittee report have to go through finance first?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It can go June 11th to the Board of Commissioners. June 11th. Yeah.
Right. So if we can get this done tomorrow or Thursday with the report is sent to full board. At least the full board has the opportunity to vote up or down on the subcommittee report.
Yes.
Individual appropriations or funding pieces would have to go through finance, I assume, if it's over a certain amount, or are all of them going to go through finance? We need a defined process here. I'm confused, and I've had multiple meetings on this. So I don't know if Linda wants to talk to that or who wants to talk to that, but
no, Madam Chair, what you've explained clarifies to me. You wanted the report to go to the board next week, June 11th.
Right. Then how are we handling individual checks cut?
And then that would go through the finance committee. Those checks would go through that formal process. That's what you're saying. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Linda, is that what you're thinking?
We can take the subcommittee report straight to the board next week, and then depending on the terms in the report, that will provide everybody the necessary guidance for which checks have to be specifically approved separately versus if the board is giving authority to issue checks, very similar to the way the chamber is setting up the program that we've talked about this morning. And so we will find out as the report is drafted, and then as the board considers the report, exactly which checks will individually go through finance and the board.
I mean, we're talking about a massive amount of checks. Do we want to set a threshold of a certain dollar amount that goes through finance and full board and everything else goes through with the guidance, or how do we structure this?
That could be part of your board, your subcommittee report that is considered and hopefully approved by the board when it gets there, because that will be the guidance to staff and the authority to staff to push this program forward.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I mean, I would think anything over $1 million should go through the board. Other thoughts? Because I would like to put that in the report.
Madam Chair, this is Talon. We do have somewhat of a process in place already that we have approved for emergency COVID expenditures, which I think this could fall under. And basically the decision is with you and Wayman. So you have the ability to, I think, to make that decision yourself, but we could put in new guidelines in this proposal, I think, as Linda suggested.
Yeah, and I know I have that leeway, but I just think it's better government and better transparency if we continue to, make sure that the board knows what we're doing and they vote on it. And I would say $1 million threshold would be a good one just to have that second check and balance. Commissioner Talon.
Well, what I'm thinking about is the small business grant loans, and if that has to go through finance and then through the board by the end of this month for a $10 million or more allocation, that really delays that project.
It won't, because remember, we're not cutting them $10 million. They're making suggestions and recommendations, and we'd be cutting multiple 10, 5, 20, and then reporting back.
Gotcha.
Chair Bolter, this is Commissioner Stack.
Yep.
I guess I agree. Would like to see that streamlining process sort of peeked out a little bit by staff in our final report, but certainly finding a way that would accept the essence of this allocation and then find a fairly simple way, whether it's $1 million threshold. I don't know what it is yet, but let staff sort of flesh that out a little bit, so in our final report we can kind of see what that looks like. But I agree, we need to find a way that allows us to go through without having to spend countless hours in committees.
And that was the point of this to begin with, on the countless hours we've spent on this. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. So when it comes to the process, Wayman, there is confusion on the front end of this. Since you mentioned it, finance, it would go to finance before going to the board. So we'll have to get that cleared up, hopefully. And I'm trying to get the understanding that if this goes to the board on June 11th, so if they already approve $25 million in expenditures for small business loans, and it's recommended by the subcommittee, are we saying that the finance committee can then?
No, we're not saying that. No.
No. What we're saying is that the board will have the decision next week, June 11th, to make the decision about the strategy that you all are talking through. But like we just said, will have a framework around what thresholds you will bring through the finance committee for individual allocations that will be coming forward. But this strategy will be approved via the report that will be coming to the board next week, June 11th. Then individual allocations for various projects will be made through the finance committee, less those decisions that will be whatever threshold, whether it's $1 million, that the board chair and the committee will agree on Thursday. So again, the
if the board approves this in theory on the 11th, and I'm just using the small business loans as example, there's $25 million on here, then why are we running it through finance again when the board has already approved that?
We're not writing a $25 million check. We're allocating a bucket of $25 million. As the subcommittee recommends a business, Commissioner Talon's Hair Shack, for instance, getting $10,000, that recommendation comes back through our finance people, Steve, Jeff, others, and they write the check and they keep track of all of that. So none of those have to come back through finance. That's why Commissioner Skaggs asked about the report back system, so that there's a reporting mechanism so we know what checks were cut. Does that make sense?
Yes, so we won't be running this through finance. We're gonna go potentially to the board on June 11th. And from there, this process will run for getting this allocated out, correct?
We are this is my understanding. We are going to vote in a final subcommittee report on Thursday, if we can agree on this list in front of us. We're gonna vote on our subcommittee report. That subcommittee report, which is guidance for staff, is going to go to full board on the 11th. Individual allocations could be made under the emergency declaration. I don't feel comfortable just having me and Wayman sign off on large amounts. So I'm suggesting that potentially we create a threshold of $1 million or more individual checks go through finance and board. Does that help? Is that more clear? Diane, are you there? Or are you on mute?
Yes. No, I'm here. I follow it. That'll be fine.
Commissioner Brebe.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. In terms of the threshold, I'm comfortable with the $1 million threshold, but I'm curious if we have any idea of how our other large counties in Michigan are handling this, and if they have a threshold, how are they distributing it? Do we have any examples at all, Wayman?
I do not have it in front of me. That report is out there. We can get you those details by Thursday.
And remember, I don't know how many of those counties did that emergency resolution either, which, you know, makes us a little unique.
But we can provide that by Thursday.
Yeah, just a brief summary would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess we're making this a hell of a lot more complicated than it is. So when I'm looking at this allocation, I see a heading of county expenses of 35 million. That's one category, right? That's one bucket. Then we have community investment of 59 million, right?
Correct.
So that's another bucket. So there's all those subcategories could go through finance at some time, but if you wanted just to approve, and this is just a thought, those two line items as they are, and I don't know what's on the bottom here for the.
Could you move down, Pam?
Okay, so there's unallocated, right? So we have three buckets. We got the community, and then we have the other, the Kent County one, and then unallocated. That's three buckets, right?
Correct.
And if we approve those through our process, then we could go ahead and allocate those, right?
Yes.
Am I not? I don't have. Yeah. Are you following me at all?
Yes, I am. I'm with you. That's pretty much what I see here. Yes.
But Madam Chair, you're saying you want a little more detail in that to go through. Is that what you're saying?
I'm hopeful that we support the document in front of us as guidance, not set in stone. These are estimates. This is This is guidance.
We all understand that.
That goes into a subcommittee report for Thursday. That goes to the full board on the 11th. All of these items then, as they come in, all these checks that get cut would get cut under that guidance. I'm suggesting though, that I don't feel comfortable just signing off me and Wayman for anything larger than $1 million. And I would like to run those items through finance and full board. That's my preference.
Okay.
We don't have to do that. It's a suggestion.
No, that sounds good to me. I was just trying to get some clarification. Thank you.
Chair, if I may.
Sure. And then Commissioner Talon has a question.
We can put that level of detail about the process in the report so that everybody can see it in writing for Thursday.
And I want to recognize too that all of these items that you're seeing on the screen, mental health at $1 million, that doesn't mean we're cutting $1 million check to Network 180. That just means this is the amount we're trying to hold back.
Yes.
As those bills come in.
Yeah.
We're creating that bucket for that. But that doesn't mean we're going to give $1 million check to Network 180.
That's correct.
It says we're trying to reserve that amount.
Placeholder.
For this purpose, right?
Yes.
We're not cutting a $25 million check to the chamber. We're not cutting a, $11 million check, whatever, $2 million. I mean, there might be some big checks cut, like the PPE order if we do another one, like we did before. But I'm just suggesting that if they're larger checks, we could go through the normal board, finance board process. We don't have to do that under the declaration, but I think we should as just good practice. Commissioner Talon? You're on
Thank
mute.
you.
There you
Thank you, Chair. I actually have a number of questions and comments. I haven't really had a chance to speak to this yet. First is that what I heard Steve Duarte say very briefly and quickly was that negotiations with the city at this point looks like about $11 million we've gotten down to. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct. That's correct. That's what we haven't negotiated, but that's the number that we came up with yesterday after 3 conversations with the city of Grand Rapids. We met on Friday twice, yesterday once. The number is 11.1 million. I'm asking for confirmation from Mark Washington as we speak. Yes.
And as a follow-up, can you give some indication of any major pieces in that $24 million reduction?
Jeff, could you please quickly share that? You were in the room yesterday. Can you go through that quickly?
I can. So they had $10 million in small business support inside the city of Grand Rapids. They agreed to be part of our program in theory. So that dropped off $10 million. They had about $4.5 million for homeless prevention. That was a duplication of our efforts. So that's $15 million. And then they had another like a $6.7 million program for more minority type businesses that we also removed to place into our larger small business loan program. So of the 25 million, those were the 3 biggest portions that were removed. Other than that, we went through line by line item, every expense. And I said, this looks okay, this doesn't look okay. And that's how we got to the number.
Thanks, that's very helpful, appreciate it. Second, we heard a very impressive and well thought out proposal from the African American Community Task Force, and they made a number of suggestions of where they could be helpful. And I just want to be sure that I recognize that we're not likely to fund them directly, but want to make sure that what they can offer in terms of contact tracing and being able to access the community for that, make sure the health department is on top of that and making that connection. Same with the community relations and education. We saw a pretty impressive demo and want to make sure that we're utilizing their expertise to reach communities that that are generally traditionally underserved. That's a comment, and I hope Adam was still here to hear that. The next thing is I was a little shocked to hear someone say that the PPE program is only for for-profits. That's the first I heard that, and I want to clarify and confirm that.
The small businesses that are being asked are majority for-profit entities. Nonprofits also have the opportunity to apply for these opportunities. As before, we were providing nonprofits PPE even before now. So
well, but Wayman, when I asked about that before, you said there were 4 or 5 that we had helped, and there are dozens, if not hundreds, of nonprofits in this community. And sorry to keep bringing this up, but small home-based childcare providers that that are going to be real critical to recovery that's coming up. So what I'm hearing is it's not just for profits; it is for both.
correct.
The PPE.
Linda, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
There's a companion program that runs through emergency management that's specifically for the nonprofits. So the way that the current PPE program that Cal's rolling out right now, if you answer that you're a nonprofit, you automatically get shifted to the other program. So it's not that it's not available, but it just tracks in 2 different categories. That's all.
So the funding is different, but it's the same program. Is that correct?
The
Yes.
funding comes through emergency management for the nonprofits. It comes through CARES Act for the for-profits.
But same program, different funding. Thank you. That's helpful. And then,
Not exactly, Commissioner, but they're very, very, very close.
okay. And then last one, the $2 million for senior citizen assistance. I love senior citizens. I wonder why that is in there, given that we have a senior millage and adjustments could potentially be made there. Can we hear the thinking on that?
It's a placeholder. Again, Commissioner, simply a placeholder again. Those numbers can swing much lower than that. We did receive something from the AAA West Michigan today about RideLink as part of the correspondence. That number is nowhere near 2 million. So I don't believe that is a hard fixed number. That number could be moved.
But aren't there, yeah, there's not potential for those resources coming out of the senior millage?
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And
So
again, that we just
that's
received that today. Yes.
the placeholder could come from other sources.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's it, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Steck?
Yeah, just quickly, I guess I would urge us to move forward and try to adopt this allocation formula that's before us. And then, as Linda indicated, let's let staff define out outside of this work today, but go out and come back with a good formula and plan for implementation that's as streamlined as possible. And so that by Thursday, we're able to do that.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. The
Support
motion is
from
to approve-
Talon.
the motion is
Moved
to
by
approve the
Commissioner Steck.
allocation.
Moved by Commissioner Steck, support by Commissioner Talon.
Wait,
So
I'm confused. I thought we decided we were going to vote this through on Thursday.
We're voting through a final subcommittee report on Thursday. They can't include this document in the report if we don't approve it.
Yes, my motion is to approve the allocation to be incorporated into that report.
Yep.
Okay, it seems to me like, okay, there are still some questions here. Are we going to add more money into the return to work PPE?
I think we should, but we need to figure out how many, how it's working, how much do we need? Do we have any more? Where do you want to pull it from?
Yeah, those dollars, again, these are buckets. These are placeholders, senior citizens allowance. Citizens, that dollars could be moved. We've got unallocated. Some of those dollars could be moved into that stream as well. So again, you're deciding on the framework today. This is a framework. This is not a final. You're giving us latitude to make those calls.
We could include in the report that the first available funds that aren't used go into another PPE order. That's an option.
And that's
that would be fine, especially since it's possible that we're looking that as much as $15 million may be available if we don't actually have to give money to the municipalities because
right.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's my understanding, is that there is flexibility built within this allocation. That, as we move forward in the implementation, we'll have to deal with it.
And if we determine that that's what we need to do, and we specify that in the report, and that's a large, over $1 million expenditure, that would then go through, we would be notified, and that would go through finance and board yet.
There are a lot of unknowns that we cannot firmly tell you about today. This gives you the flexibility to decide later. It gives you the framework in which to move this train down the track. It puts us in a position to say, here's some general boundaries that you're going to be allowed to move these dollars in front of the board for final approvals. This thing could shift and change based on the intel that we're going to get over the next several weeks.
And we're getting that report back. The other thing I would like included in the report, and I think everyone agrees, is a independent auditor and what they are auditing to be included in a requirement in the report. I think that's really important. I hope, does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Looks like Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Talon have questions.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I just want to add that I think Wayman really hit the nail on the head. We are going to have significantly more need than the 114.6 million. I don't think that determining, you know, the needs, I think we have more needs than we have funds. And the key is to be thoughtful in our process. I think we've shown that. And I really agree with the document we have in front of us. And if we can get this and the process laid out and have the board review this on the 11th, I think that's great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the draft of the subcommittee report at this point. So I know we have a motion on the table. I just wanted to share I am supportive of that motion.
Commissioner Talon?
You, Chair, I'm supportive of the, well, yeah, I did support the motion, but I'm really concerned about process moving forward. And I heard, you know, some talk at one point about a report in October. I would love to see us see an update similar to what we asked Wayman to do on a more regular basis, at a minimum of once a month, with where we're at.
The report was just to reevaluate the money left over, the funds unallocated. That was what the October date was for.
Okay. What, and so I hope that on Thursday we will have a process for what those reports look like and what the process will be for reallocating these buckets. It's not clear to me how that will happen. So some thought and putting something.
Well, we could reconvene the subcommittee. We could just run it through full board. We could, I guess, whatever is suggested.
We'll put some thoughts together for your consideration on Thursday.
Staff has been putting together some good ideas and would look forward to that on Thursday. Thank you.
Commissioner, anyone else have questions or comments on this? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the, I don't know what this document's called because I can't see the top of it.
Allocation strategy for the CARES Act funding.
Allocation strategy.
Moved by Breeby.
Support by Womack.
Moved by Commissioner Breeby, support by Commissioner Womack. I hope there are no other questions or comments, but I will ask.
Wasn't there a motion?
Is that different than the motion I made?
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
I supported.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Steck, supported by Commissioner Talon. We've had questions or comments. I will go through it. I support Commissioner Steck.
Yes, I support it.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes, I support it.
Commissioner Breeby.
Yes, I support.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Commissioner Talon.
Support.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Womack.
Support.
All right, so we're making some progress. So we're going to move forward then with including this and the Grand Rapids plan incorporated into a subcommittee report that we will review on Thursday. The hope is to review that, make any additional changes, vote that out, and then get that to full board on the 11th.
Yes.
With that, let's go back to the agenda. We are on to item 6, subcommittee documents and correspondence. I believe we got some more correspondence coming in as of last week.
Yes, we have information that we received from RideLink to senior millage. The zoo provided us information. I also put in there a new FAQ that Jeff talked about earlier, and the city of Grand Rapids provided some correspondence. Pam, what else is in that folder so that they know it's there? We will continue to post that information for you in your folders. It's accessible as well. Eventually, it will be all available out on the website for any citizen that would like to review the information.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the correspondence we received? I do know we did receive, I thought, something from Bingoy, and I was happy to see the Chamber incorporated.
I am meeting with Bingoy this afternoon to hear from him. He wants to be considered much like the other chambers to be involved with that process for small businesses.
But I do think the Chamber did incorporate their group.
Yes, they did.
So we've covered
That's what he asked for. Yep.
Perfect. All right, can we please go back to the agenda? We're on to miscellaneous. Any commissioner miscellaneous today?
Yes,
Commissioner
Chair.
Stack?
Yes, thank you. Are we going to get a recommendation from the United Way to do a similar rollout process for the $10 million that we got from the $10 million to the nonprofit community?
Yeah, we need to discuss that. Wayman, what were your plans for that? Are we thinking of partnering?
Steve and I,
with
yeah,
United
we've
Way?
talked with them. We talked with Cheryl Shook yesterday as well from Family Promise. We're going through that process, identifying what is the best way to manage that. So we have not locked in on that, but that is the idea, to have them work with us for the nonprofits that we still would like to make sure are provided the support. So we're working through that right now.
Okay, so we'll get that later. Good.
Yes.
And then the only other thing is whether I can get an appointment with the Talon Hair Salon. I'd like to be first in line.
After me. I think I
Second in
need it the
line.
worst.
They're currently not allowed to operate, Commissioner.
All right,
I meant
Commissioner
in the garage.
Womack.
Yes, I want to go to Jim Talent's hair salon once my hair turns all the way gray. I want it to be as white and bright as Jim's. That's beautiful. I enjoyed today's meeting and just looking at what happened this weekend and what's happening across the United States of America. It's so hard to understand that a lot of the senseless violence and looting, to get a message out that I think is being heard. I think there will be justice in Minnesota, but I do understand the underlying causes of the brutality and lynchings throughout the years. But I just, to bring it into what we're doing, I think a lot of that powder keg in those communities is not only because of the brutality, but when you can't breathe financially, you can't breathe economically, you can't breathe physically. It's just a power keg that's been there. And as we said sometime in this meeting, if we can do things where no community feels left behind, I know we'll be doing our part, and at the same time not take on more than we can handle. We cannot solve all the world's problems, but I'm glad we can be a part of doing our part to make this a brighter world. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Womack. I don't see any other hands for miscellaneous. So staff is going to have a lot of work between now and Thursday. Oh, Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if we actually got to this, but I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Talon's thoughts about periodic reports, and just suggest that the chair and the administrator consider keeping this subcommittee as maybe the primary place where we get those, I think, monthly reports, and so that we see, we keep hearing that these numbers are soft, that there might be some reallocation. So I think that a periodic update on the document that we just approved, as well as any other kind of information and feedback from the community, might make
we could do that.
sense.
Yeah, and we could consider including it in executive committee report, and then the subcommittee could join, because that's already a previous, it's a once a month, I believe, scheduled meeting. Or we could do it once a month after board, immediately following a board meeting.
Whatever you think is best for the schedule. I just think that it makes sense for us to have those periodic check-ins.
Okay, I don't disagree. It looks like Commissioner Talon supports that. Commissioner Womack has his hand up.
One last thing I just really want to say, I'm so proud of Administrator Wayman Britt and this staff and our health department. All the work that they've been giving us through the subcommittee, I still want to say that we know that because of this pandemic, their paperwork and their load and the load of this staff working to get these grants in and making sure as people are sending us paperwork, we're sending the right paperwork out to get our funding. And the work they've already had, I just want to say I am extremely proud once again of Administrator Wayman Britt, the staff, Adam London, and our health department, and so many other heads of departments whose names I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other Commissioner miscellaneous? I just want to say thank you to obviously our board members who have hung with us every, twice a week for multiple hours. I know this is a huge commitment. It's very important to our community. And so what I think you've done is very, very important to our community, and it's a huge public service. And I also hope that the full board understands the work we've put in. So please feel free to communicate that to our colleagues for their support for this report. And then I also want to again acknowledge Wayman and his team. I don't physically know how he's done everything. Wayman, I don't know when you're sleeping. I don't know how you're doing it. So and we'll have more glowing things next, on Thursday. But I just really want to thank the team.
Well, you've got a team. That's how you do it, Mandy. That's the only way you do it. Thank God we have a team that's here. So that's all it is.
That's my miscellaneous. We'll move on to Commissioner Skaggs is saying that's Wayman's training at U of M.
He's right. No excuses. Exactly. That's it. No excuses, my friend.
We'll move on to public comment. Pam, did we have any public comment today?
Let's see. Nope, no public comment in the inbox.
All right. I don't see any other chat other than several go green and go white comments. So again, I hope I didn't come across as curt. I'm just trying to move us along. I really think we've done a ton of work. I really hope that I do think we have put together a very, very solid product for this community. And with that, we are adjourned until Thursday. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you Thursday.
Thank you.